Good morning. Welcome to another live feed on Shaman's YouTube channel. Let's get into this first new book that I'm gonna be reading. Brand new book. It's January 4th, 1976. Phoenix versus Boston Celtics. The greatest game ever played. Um, this will be the 50th anniversary coming up. Uh, this coming June 1976. So it'll be 50 years. 50 years. And June 4th, 1976 was the day the greatest game ever played was played between the Boston Celtics and the Phoenix Suns. This was in the NBA Finals, 1976. As I believe it was Game 5 of that NBA Finals. So let's get into it. Yeah, it was Game 5. All right. What makes a great basketball game? Talented players, great shots, amazing passes, slick moves, tremendous hustle, a large lead, a fantastic comeback, an overtime period, another overtime period, another overtime period. A sellout crowd in a celebrated arena, fans rushing the court, one of those fans attacking the referee, a National Basketball Association game between the Phoenix Suns and Boston Celtics almost 45 years ago when the book was written, but now it's been 50 years, going on 50 years ago. So 2026 had all of those things and more. No, it was not a Game 7, nor was it a Game 6. It didn't matter. This is the story of what is widely regarded as the greatest game ever played. Game 5 of the 1976 NBA Finals. 1996 Classic Sports Network, now ESPN Classic, polled NBA writers, and they voted the contest as the greatest single game in the then 50-year history of the league. Played exactly on 1 month before the nation's bicentennial celebration, the game began just after 9 p.m. on Friday night, June 4th, but due to its length, spilled over into Saturday, June 5th. It was played in a historic Boston Garden before a crowd of 15,320. The Celtics won 128 to 126 in triple overtime. There were so many twists and turns during the game. In the overtime session, several players on both sides hit baskets that looked impossible to make. Towards the end of the second overtime, Boston's John Havlicek drove to the hoop and banked in a shot as the clock hit zero. Mayhem ensued. Hundreds of crazy Celtics fans rushed the court to celebrate what they thought was a victory and a 3-2 Boston lead in the series, which the Celtics went on to win in 6 games. It was a much different time in the 70s, that's for sure, and much confusion. It was determined that 1 second be put back on the clock. One fan was so upset he assaulted referee Richie Powers. The court was eventually cleared, and the Suns got one last shot. Guard Hurd threw up a turnaround 20-foot prayer that fell through the hoop, forcing the third overtime. In that third extra period, Sun and ex-Celtic Paul Westphal made some ridiculous shots that were Globetrotter worthy. When the game finally ended at 12:08 a.m., 5 players, 2 Suns and 3 Celtics, had fouled out. Boston backups Jim Ord and Glenn McDonald had been thrust into playing crucial minutes and came through with flying colors. The players were physically drained. The players, coaches, and even the fans were emotionally drained. The Celtics who finished 54-28 during the regular season, the heavy favorites to win their record 13th NBA title, had greats and future Hall of Famers such as Havlicek, Dave Cowens, JoJo White, next son Charlie Scott. Suns in just their 8th season won only 42 games during the regular part of the schedule. It was just their second postseason appearance ever. They were led by her next fall Rookie of the Year, Alvin Adams. What makes this remarkable basketball game even more special, according to the author, it was the very first sporting event you remember was watching on TV. Person was 9 years old at the time. There were many thrilling NBA games prior to June 4th, 1976. There have been many since. According to the author, he says, believe that Phoenix Boston Classic will continue to stand the test of time as the greatest game ever played. We're going to start with chapter 1, the pregame. Al Bianchi made sure he wore his sports coat, his old sport coat. It was the one I wore when I didn't care if they threw beer on me, he said. They wore Boston Celtics fans. Bianchi, Phoenix Suns assistant coach, was preparing for Game 5 of the 1976 NBA Finals at the Boston Garden. I knew since the game didn't start until after 9 o'clock, they'd been out to dinner drinking. You remember, everybody was hammered. We called Phoenix radio broadcaster Al McCoy. The series was tied 2-2. The Celtics had won games 1 and 2 at the Garden, before the Suns took game 3 and 4 at the Arizona Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Phoenix. The winner of game 5 would have the inside track to the championship. We knew we couldn't afford to lose, because if we did, even if we won game 6 in Phoenix, we had to go back to Boston for game 7. Anything can happen in game 7, said Celtics backup center Steve Koberski. This was Kobuski. This was old hat for Boston. The Celtics were aiming for their 13th NBA title, while this was just the Suns' second postseason appearance in their 8-year history. I remember looking over at Red, going to Jerry Colangelo, and this was my first NBA first finals. It was just another finals for him, something he had experienced many, many times. I was wondering what it would feel like to be in that position. This wasn't Boston. This all this history. This was Phoenix. This series was the big sporting event in the history of the city. This is a real shot for the Suns, according to Bob Bryant, the beat writer for the Globe. Ed Searcy, a reserve small forward for Boston, a small portion of the 1975-76 regular season, said that for that Suns team to be in the NBA championship series, they were very good. The scene was set. The Suns and Celtics were braced for battle. That Boston Garden was ancient, and I just loved the setting, said Alvin Adams, Phoenix rookie starting center. We were ready to take them on in Boston, declared Suns forward Curtis Perry. We called Will head coach Young County in the Globe. I remember taking the floor. I never heard a buzz like that. We're gonna go to chapter 2. That'll be it for this chapter. The Suns' road to Game 5 of the 1976 NBA Finals was not a long one, but not a happy one either. Like most expansion teams, like 68 and 69 Suns had a rough go of it. Under former Chicago Bulls head coach Johnny Kerr, they won their first game, 116-107 over the Seattle Supersonics. They actually split their first 10 games. Then in reality set in, began with 111-09 loss to the Detroit Pistons in Tucson. Arizona, they lost 12 games in a row to fall to 5-17. The losing streak ended on December 4th with a resounding 126-97 victory over the San Francisco Warriors. Phoenix got right back on the losing track, though, and after a 117-93 defeat at the hands of the Warriors on January 26th, stood at 10-42. And 2 victories over Milwaukee and a win over Philadelphia gave the Suns their first 3-game winning streak of the season. Unfortunately, they would win only 3 more games the rest of the season. They wound up with the NBA Worst 16-66 record and last place in the Western Division. Believe it or not, there were bright spots for Phoenix, including point guard Gail Goodrich, whom the Suns selected from the Los Angeles Lakers in 1968 for the Fantasy Draft. Gail was a legitimate 20-point scorer. He stepped right in and given that opportunity to start, was a prolific scorer and did a great job for us. According to Jerry Colangelo, general manager at the time. Averaging 21.6.9 rebounds and 4.8 assists per game was Dick Van Arsdale, the original Sun, whom Phoenix also chose in the expansion draft. Other key contributors were centers like Jim Fox and George Wilson, rookie power forward Gary Reger, and Sprague small forward McCoy McLemore. George gave the Suns some veteran help, both on the floor and in the locker room. Gotta go to Ray heads up. He was my favorite player. McCoy McLemore provides some size. The signing of small forward Connie Hawkins along with Van Arsdale and Goodrich gave Phoenix a strong 1-2-3 punch in 1969-70. The acquisition of veteran power forward Paul Silas and a trade with Atlanta also helped. It was an up and down season of streaks. The Suns started 1-4, dropped to 7-15, but winning 7-9 games to get to 14-17 after 126-110. The home win over the Cincinnati Royals on December 13th. Then they lost 10 of 13 games to fall to 17-27, 9 days into the new decade. They won 12-18 to improve to 29-33, and dropped 4 straight before winning 10 of 16 to finish the regular season with a 39-43 record. Good enough for 4th place in the Western Division. The playoff berth to boot. The 23-win improvement was the biggest one-season tournament in the history of the NBA at that point. Hawkins averaged 24.6 points and 10.4 rebounds per game. Connie was transformational. He gave us great credibility. He put us on the map. I pushed him extremely hard to do what I felt he was capable of doing. Connie was one of the showmen, one of the guys who did things most players didn't do at that time. Called Rick Barry. Played against Hawkins in both the NBA and the ABA, American Basketball Association. He had a little bit of that globetrotter stuff in him. He was a heck of a talent. He could get to the basket. He could finish with excitement. He did amazing things above the rim. Most people didn't really get a chance to see him and see what he was capable of doing. Hawk had big hands. He's a good passer too. Van Arsdale said he was one of a kind. John Winslow says he was a guy who became Phoenix's identity. He was Dr. J before Dr. J. Connie was one of the greatest ever to lace him up, added McCoy. And then also, next 69, next 70 season, Van Arsdale averaged 21.3 points per game. Gilbert hung up 20 points per game contest, and Silas averaged 20.8 points, 0.7 rebounds per game. Dick provided veteran strength for the Suns in the early years, said McCoy. Colangelo added he was a shooter, a prolific jump shooter. He certainly helped us early on when we were establishing ourselves as a franchise. Other key contributors were Fox, shooting guard Dick Snyder, Ricky Center, Neil Walk, small forward Jerry Chambers, shooting guard Art Harris. Neil could score, had a nice touch for a big man, had a little running hook. He could shoot the 15, 16-foot jump shot. Russell said he was a good player. Neil was an outstanding center. Said McCoy. Art and I used to go into the games together and kind of disrupt a little bit defensively. Russell said, well, we were both aggressive defenders. That Art was a good player, a high energy guy. He could handle the ball and get to the rim. The Suns nearly pulled off a shocker in the first round of the playoffs against Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, and Los Angeles Lakers. They took a 3-1 series lead before Fox hurt his ankle and missed their 138-121 game 5 loss. Returned for game 6 and 7, but was not 100% healthy. The Suns lost both games and were ousted from the playoffs. I think the jump from year 1 to year 2, accomplishing what we did was extraordinary. And then selection of Connie Fitzsimmons as our new head coach, coming from Kansas State, he was the right fit for when you look at the talent that we had. Neil was a very good low post, even high post center. Kind of used as triple post offense. He was inaugurated by Tex Winter. The coach preceded him at Coach Kansas State with Paul, who was a perfect power forward. Hulk, who was the other scoring forward, were in good shape. Going in next 71 was Goodrich. He was traded to Los Angeles for a 7-foot, 230-pound veteran center Bell Counts. Two additions were guard Clem Haskins and Wetzel. 6'3", 195-pound Haskins by way of a trade with Chicago. Wetzel had been property of the Suns ever since they selected him from Los Angeles in the next expensive draft. Clem was a great jump shooter. He's a very important piece to what we had at that time. I was very high on him and his abilities. He was a very good guard with good size. The type of player as a coach you'd be happy to have on your team. Clem had a real smooth stroke. His 1970-71 Suns began the season by losing 6 of their first 9 games, but soon turned it around 110-102. Home win over the Buffalo Braves on November 2nd, fueled a 4-game winning streak, 7 victories in 8 games. Defeats to New York, Detroit, Baltimore, even Phoenix's record at 10-10. The Suns won 10 of their next 15 games to improve to 20-15, a week before this Christmas holiday. They would never look back. They would stay above the 500 mark the rest of the season. In fact, they stood at 45-28 after a 114-108 road win over the Pistons on March 9th. Under the new format that now had an Eastern Conference and Western Conference, the Suns wound up 48-34 in the 3rd place in the Midwest Division. So, 3 games behind the 2nd place Bulls. However, because of the new format awarded postseason berths to only the top 2 teams in each of the 4 divisions, had to sit home while 41-41 San Francisco, which finished 2nd in the Pacific Division, qualified for the playoffs. It was frustrating, that's for sure. That triple pass post offense was quite effective. I thought we were really, really good. We were good because there was an to a self-position, an attitude of playing together, an attitude of playing hard all the time. Leading the way for Phoenix was Van Arsdale, who averaged 21.9 points per game. Marcus who netted 20.9 points, 9.1 per rebounds per game. Haskins averaged 17.8 points per game, and 71.72. Phoenix improved by a game to 49-33, highlighted by an 8-game winning streak early in the season, but again finished in third place in the Midwest Division, 8 games in back of second place Chicago, thus leaving them out of the postseason party once again. Despite the disappointment, a huge addition to the team. On March 14th, near the end of the season, was guard Charlie Scott. Scott was retained in the trade with Boston for Silas and Cut Pinch. Rookie point guard Mo Layton was also a key contributor. Mo was a little bit sneaky. We looked at him, didn't think he was such a good athlete. We had a knack for getting to places on the floor that he wanted to. He had deceptive quickness. I think he surprised a lot of people who were guarding him. He was a nice player. Under new head coach Butch Van Vetterkov, Angelo, who replaced the former 7 games into the schedule, Phoenix slipped to 38-44. Behind second place, Golden State. This time in the Pacific Division. The team's new home, Scott, though, averaged 25.3 points, 6.1 assists per game. Walker had a magnificent season, averaging 20.2 points, 12.4 rebounds per talent contest. There was a new head coach in town, 1974. John McLeod was his name, providing the Suns his game. 36-year-old came from the University of Oklahoma, the Suns to 3 near 20-win seasons in the 6 years as head coach. And selecting John as the head coach, I just had felt that great potential. He was so focused on the game. He was a student of the game, so I thought he was the right guy. Said Colangelo. 2 additions to the Suns in the 73-74 were veterans like small forward Keith Erickson, rookie forward Mike Bantam. Erickson arrived 10 games into the season by way of a trade with the Lakers involving Connie Hawkins. Bantam was Phoenix's first round draft pick of St. Joseph. Keith was a multiple skilled player who could play 2 or 3 positions. He developed an outside shot, which he didn't have when he first came to the league. I was in Chicago for the startup of the Bulls in '66. We took him expensive draft, so I had a pretty good feel for him. He was excellent defensively, real team player. He's a very, very valuable to our club. Keith was smart, knew how to play the game. He could play some defense. He was a good all-around player. Mike had a good size. He had a good wingspan. Could run pretty well for a big guy. McLeod's first Suns team got off to a terrible start, dropping in 18 of its first 25 games, which included a 10-game losing streak. The Suns had a different middle third of the season. They were 22-32 on a 119-112 victory over Los Angeles on February 10th. They were 5-7 game losing streak, contributed to a 30-52 final record, 4th place in the Pacific Division. Scott averaged 25.4 points per game. New to Phoenix in 1974-75 was Curtis Perry, center Dennis Autry, shooting guard Nate Hawthorne. All 3 arrived by way of a trade that sent Walt to expansion. New Orleans Jazz, and also new to the team was small for Fred Saunders, 2nd-round draft pick out of Syracuse University. 1974-75 Suns were actually enjoying a pretty good season, relatively speaking. A 10-game losing streak dropped them from 29-35 on March 6th to 29-45 on March 22nd. They ended up 32-50, 4th place in the Pacific, just 2 games better than the previous season. Perry averaged a double-double, 13.4 points, 11.9 rebounds per game. Curtis was a good rebounder and could shoot the ball when he needed to. He just played a good all-around game. He was an asset to the team. Psychologically, he was a good guy to have with you. He could also play defense. Dennis wasn't very athletic, but he could shoot the ball, do some rebounding, play some defense. Dennis was tough, and he had a good knowledge of the game. Nate could jump. He could shoot the ball. He had enough time. Nate was a tremendous leaper and was a contributor. That 1974-75 season was frustrating for everybody, said Autry. We weren't playing well as a team. Losing makes it seem like the season is 200 games instead of 82. Losing grinds you up. So say Colangelo, Giannis first 2 seasons as head coach, well learning experience for him in terms of coaching at the professional level and getting acquainted with the personnel not only on our team but players throughout the league. And that was the price of admission, right? So be in chapter 3 tomorrow. So I'm done. I had to meet people tuning in today. Fortunately, it is what it is. But I'm gonna go to the Trinity, Freedom in Christ Study Bible. I am who I am. Exodus chapter 3, verse 13, 14, 15. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers have sent me to you. And they ask him, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name, forever the name by which I am to be remembered from generation to generation. God called Moses to lead his people out of bondage in Egypt to the promised land. Moses wanted to know how the people would know that God had sent him. God responds to Moses in Exodus chapter 3, verse 13 to 15. Answering all his doubts. The name I am means that what God was in the past, he's in the present and will also be in the future. The most distinctive name by which God was known to the Israelites was Yahweh, sometimes rendered Jehovah, which comes from that same root as I am. God gave this name to Moses as a credential that would and did convince the children of Israel that God was faithful to his covenant and would lead them out of bondage. The name does not primarily disclose who he is in himself, rather it discloses who he is and was and will be to the people of God in redemptive history. The purpose of this revelatory name is to alleviate the fears and doubts of the people. The name appears in the New Testament when Jesus responds to the Jews. I tell you the truth, before Abraham was born, I am. John chapter 8, verse 58. Moses was the lawgiver who led God's people from the slavery in Egypt to the promised land. Jesus fulfilled the law and led God's people from slavery to sin to freedom in Christ and eternal life. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the same God who saw and now lives us from the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of his loved Son. John records a number of I am statements made by Jesus. I am the bread of life. Like the manna from heaven that sustained the physical life of the Israelites, Jesus also came from heaven to give us spiritual life. I am the resurrection and the life. He believes in me will live. Even though he dies, whoever lives and believes in me will never die. In other words, if you believe in Jesus, you will continue to live spiritually. And when you die physically, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. These are the only means by which we can receive eternal life and to get to God's presence. He's not only our Savior, he's our shepherd. We are the sheep of his pasture. And the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The I am is the God of the Old Testament as well as the God of the New. He is the same today as he was in the past. We can trust the God who never changes. Right, so that's it for today. I'll be at the last Adam, Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Tomorrow in KFC on chapter 3, Dynasty of June 4th, 1976. Phoenix Suns versus Boston Celtics, the greatest game ever played. Subscribe to the channel. Till then, talk to you tomorrow.